It's good to be here. I learned a whole bunch from the congregation of Edgewood Presbyterian Church, and I remember some of them, and a lot of them are gone, but I remember Mr. Bob Fouché taught me just about everything I know about mechanics, and I use that in ministry, and I run this thing called the Sacred Wrench, and for military wives and unwed mothers that are, or single parent women, if the car goes out, then I get them, bring it over here and fix it. And I kind of feel like I'm helping the military out a little bit in that, people take advantage of folks that don't know anything much about cars. And like I know one lady where I kind of started, she paid $75 to get a tire patched. That's crazy. It cost all about probably 25 cents for a patch. But anyway, and then there's Colonel Bob Parker, and we used to go fishing a lot. Mr. Fred Holt, he taught me all about decorum and how to say things that need to be said without making anybody mad. he was good. Miss Sue is always good to see, and pretty much when we used to go by there and all, she had this big cookie jar thing on one of the counters in there. And man, she made the best cookies and brownies and stuff, and you always have to stop by that cookie jar and at least get you something. Then I don't know. I got married at Edgewood Church. Amelia, that's my daughter, she was baptized at Edgewood Church, and I got Harrison Morgan to do that. I started my first church in Pelham, Georgia, and I also worked for the Presbyterian. I was kind of known as one of Harrison's mafia. There were about 3 of us. He sent us all over everywhere. And he told me one day, he said, I did call to get a reference for you from the seminary. And he said, I figured now I can just tell you what they said. And I said, all right, what did they say? He said, well, I called the president. He said, I tell you what, says, the only way I can describe it, he said, he's the most unusual student we've ever had. But when it comes to working, he don't shy from it. He'll work 24 hours a day if you need it. So Harrison hired me, and I was in Pelham. We had a distinguished gentleman, very, very distinguished guy, World War II hero and everything. And he's a member of the church. Of course, me, I'm always running around finding some place to hang out and do something here and further the ministry. And one day, Larry Langley owned the shop, the gas station and everything. His help didn't come in, and Mr. Twitty had to have his car brakes done because he had to be in Macon at such and such time that afternoon. So I was in there working on his car, changing out the brakes, and he comes driving up, and he says, what you doing? I said, working on your brakes. He said, I don't think that's very dignified for a minister to be working as a mechanic. I said, Mr. Twitty, they said you got to be in Macon by 5 o'clock, and there ain't nobody do these brakes with me, so I guess you better just turn your head and don't look at me, and I'll get you up there by 5 o'clock. And so that point on, he never said anything bad about me, period. So you can make friends doing a lot of different things, and I had me a ministry up in South Carolina with a bunch of motorcycle gang guys, a couple of Hells Angels and this, that, and the other, but I don't know, I started hanging around in there, and they really nice people, but I got to do a lot of things in terms of ministry with them, and they wouldn't go to church, but if they needed a pastor or something, they'd call me, and I'd go down there and do whatever they needed doing and get there from that. But because I'm kind of unusual, I use a lot of props and stuff in my sermons. And we had a professor up there at seminary, his name was Wade Hewitt. We called him Wade the Blade because, he never passed anybody with any kind of flying colors or anything. And so I was up there, and I was doing some props and stuff. And he came up after the thing, started laying into me and said, this is like Ron Popeil selling those pocket fishermen. He said, I don't think y'all be doing that. I said, well, maybe not, but old Ron Popeil, he sells a lot of pocket fishermen, and so there wasn't too much he could say about that. But anyway, this is my world-famous tackle box sermon, and I took it from Corinthians, the 1 Corinthians verses, chapter 12, verses 27 through the end of the chapter. I didn't want to read the whole chapter, but in chapter 12, in the beginning, he talks about gifts of the Spirit, and people have all this stuff. And so then he finishes up with this. I'm going to take my watch off so I don't go over time. Paul writes this to the church in Corinth. Now you are the body of Christ and individually members of it. And God has appointed in the church first apostles, second prophets, third teachers, then deeds of power, then gifts of healing, forms of assistance, and forms of leadership, all kinds of various tongues. And then he raises this question, well, are all apostles? Are all prophets? Are all teachers? Do all work miracles? Do all possess gifts and healing? Do you all speak in tongues? Do all interpret? And strive now for the greater gifts, and I will show you a more excellent way. So, I was out fishing. I'm basically lived in the woods, and I was fishing and hunting and all that. But I was out there fishing by myself one day, and this thing kind of came to me. Get this thing open. All right. I was out there fishing, and I had this idea that first thing I pulled on was this plastic worm. And if you want to catch bass, this is the way to go. Got thinking about that in this passage for some reason, and I thought, well, you know, that's kind of like the foundation of a church. You got members in this church that are always there. They are steady. They are people you can rely on. Just like when I'm going bass fishing, I rely on these more than anything else. But church wouldn't be church if you didn't have those foundational members. You know, and one thing, you know, I look out, it's very unfortunately the way it is with a lot of Presbyterian churches is most of the childbearing folks, they don't go to church, and so you don't have any children. Everybody wants to come to church, and they want something for the kids. I tried to rent some kids to see if I could get some families to come into church one time. That didn't work out too good. But, you know, the steady people that have been here forever, y'all teach a lot of people a lot of things, and you don't really call attention to it. But churches rely on this foundational thing. Then I like this thing, and it's a Bomber Model A, and it'll catch, it's really good at catching bass if they're like not on the bottom, kind of midway, but you don't use it that much, but I use it some because it is effective and it does some things. So you've got kind of the next level of church member. They're steady, rock solid, but they do some things, volunteer. You can count on somebody to go do something if you need it done. And it works. So you're going to have people in the church that are solid citizens, solid church members, but y'all going to have some that take that foundation and go on and do certain things, like the lady that did the Minute for Mission up here. I mean, you know, she'll come do that. I don't know what else she does, but at least you can count on her to do that. And Aisha with her children's message, at least you can count on her to do that. Then, after we do all that, there is this thing called a rattle trap. It's a modified rattle trap. It's a deep diver, and it just works every once in a while. And this reminded me of the folks that come to church, and they come on Easter. You might as well wish them Happy Thanksgiving because you ain't gonna see them again until Christmas. You know, but they come and you're spreading the word, and you know it has some degree of impact on them. This one here is called a brokeback Rapala, and it's a good topwater fishing lure. It wiggles like it's got a broke back, and I have noticed over the years that there are a lot of people that are broken folks, people that have had injuries and all kind of stuff, but they come to church. And it's a testimony to the goodness of the church because they make the effort to get here. And that's not an easy thing to do if you're handicapped. I about died a couple of years ago. I was in the hospital for 9 months and was in ICU for like 2 months. And I had to go through about 6 months of rehab to get where I could walk again. And so I understand, that it is real tough if you got mobility problems to get around in this world because not everything is handicap accessible. But your church is handicap accessible. You've had some people with different things. They participated. You welcomed them. And so, that's a job well done. And it's a good testament that the church is doing something good because these folks make an effort to get here. And, that just sort of resonated with me, and I thought that was pretty good. Then you've got, where is it? This one right here. It's a tiny baby torpedo lure. And it's a bass lure, but this thing in the back spins and it makes a lot of racket. Well, unfortunately, we got some folks in the church, they make a lot of racket. Don't know what else they do, but they make a lot of racket. But they keep us all on our toes, and it kind of helps us in our own personal way to kind of reassess our spirituality and ask the question, what am I believing and what am I doing about it? And how am I spreading the word, or how am I witnessing to Christ, or how am I witnessing in such a way that my behavior shows it? And so these folks, they have a place in the church too. And then there are these folks, I lost my watch now. There are these folks here that are like, I went fishing the other day and I rearranged my tackle box. This is my favorite go-to lure. It's a beetle spin. It'll catch anything, bass, brim. About the only thing I never have caught on one is a catfish. But I've caught everything else on these things. And usually when I go fishing, especially if I'm taking somebody who's never been fishing before, I'll tie one of these on for them and let them cast it. When I was in seminary, we had a professor, or the president of a seminary from Jamaica, and he was up there taking like some continuing ed classes, and we were in the Aramaic class. We suffered through that. I don't even know why I signed up for it, but I did. But he was my buddy. He'd never been fishing before. So I said, okay, we're going fishing. And across the way from the seminary, there was a children's home, and behind the children's home, there's a lake. So I go out there and I tie him on one of these things. And I said, just throw it out there, just reel it back in as fast as you can. See if anything hits. If it doesn't, throw it back out there again and don't reel it as fast. Just vary the speed on it. I said, you catch something. So he goes out about the second cast. His rod doubles up and he goes to holler. He didn't know what he was supposed to do or anything else. And so I went over there. I said, keep reeling. Just hold your rod still and just keep reeling and come on back in. Pulled out a bucket. So, I mean, this thing will do anything. You've got people in the church that will do anything. It doesn't matter if it's working on the grounds, cutting bushes. It doesn't matter if you got to have help in the kitchen. Doesn't matter if you've got to have some extra people around. If somebody's having a wedding, you want to have a staff that's sort of there to assist that. These folks, we rely on because they're the ones that actually provide the help that we need in certain situations, and we count on them. We're glad they're there. So, you get in the tackle box a lot of different things, and the last thing, my last resort, is a good old cork and hook and crickets or worms. Maybe chicken livers if I'm fishing for catfish, or hot dogs, because Miss Sue has the place up on the river, and for some reason or other, you can catch catfish with hot dogs up there. Never thought of that, but I've done that, and when that comes, it sort of culminates the top of this list, in that everything and everybody has got something to do. It has something to do because they were called by the Spirit of Jesus Christ. The cork in the bobber, you can't do anything else, you just give it a shot. And that's kind of what sometimes I think you have to do in the church, especially congregations that may be struggling or something. You just have to go out and give it a shot somehow or other. Try something even if it seems weird. Don't do anything particularly blasphemous or anything like that, but up your game a little bit. See what happens. Find some kids, bring them to church, and let them, attract some families and stuff. And pretty soon I think the church will get off the ground. Paul concludes this chapter on spiritual gifts by basically saying, in the way he does it, I'd have done it a little different, but he says, that everybody is necessary for the body of Christ. Not everybody can heal. Not everybody can be an elder. Not everybody can sing in the choir. I don't sing. I can't carry a tune in a bucket. But, anything you do in this church, there are people that do it. And that's their kind of unique way of participating and carrying on with the church. So, the end conclusion is, he says, strive for greater gifts. Appreciate your congregation. Figure out how this congregation can move forward as a unit so you can grow and you can attract people, and you can also understand that personally you're welcome. It doesn't matter if you do anything like anybody else. You're welcome. The church has got room for everybody. And I think if you start kind of going from that thing, I always say, don't make an effort to make an excuse, or don't make an excuse not to make an effort. So you make an effort, and you go out there and you do whatever you think's going to work, and you try enough stuff, it's going to work out. Just like you try enough stuff in this tackle box, you're going to catch something, even if it's a bucket. So that's kind of the way I derive this. I call it the world-famous tackle box sermon because I get asked to do it a lot. And so anyway, that's just some ways that God speaks to me, even, when I'm out fishing or sitting in the woods. And it's always good to do that because I really appreciate the world that God created